I'm going to be talking about attention, but I also want you guys to pay attention because I'm going to bribe you to pay attention. And I'm going to bribe you with what is arguably a little bit of a shit present because it's total self-promotion. But I'm going to bribe you with a copy of my book for the best question at the end of the session. So if you don't pay attention, you ain't going to be able to ask a question, and then you're going to be all losers. So definitely need to be paying attention. It's definitely the greatest way to start a talk is by insulting the entire audience. So I'd love to talk to you guys a little bit about how attention actually happens. And so I'm going to be followed up by the amazing mummy blogger, who is going to talk to you a little bit about how you can actually utilize that and do some cool things on social media. But I wanted to show you guys how the brain actually works, some of the theories about attention, and how you guys can utilize that to think a little bit differently about how you can get and keep attention when people are paying it. So I'm Kenda Macdonald. I am the founder of Automation Ninjas, and we specialize in behavioral marketing automation, which is quite a big mouthful, but basically it's all about understanding your customers, understanding the behavior of your customers, and then creating journeys that they really want to be a part of. Because when you tap into that attention stream, you can get better quality customers, you can get better quality leads that convert better and stick around for longer, spending more money, which is what we all want, and they're happy while they're doing it. So you want to be able to make this process, and I want to teach you a little bit about how to actually start that process, because if you don't have attention, you ain't got nothing. So if you follow me on Twitter, you can send me photos of Highland cows, because that's my favorite thing ever and totally non-related to this talk. So let's get started with some of the really heavy stuff, because everyone wants to be really depressed in January, right? So let's get started with some of the problems that we're currently facing as businesses. So this is my favorite part of the talk, because I'm assuming majority British room, right? And I know everybody loves audience participation. And we're going to do some audience participation. And I'm just going to stand here really awkwardly until you guys actually do it. And then you'll feel really awkward. And someone will break. It will happen. So I'm going to ask you some questions. And the first question is, what is it that consumers actually want? And I want 3 answers at least. Happiness. Happiness? Yeah. Attention. Yeah. Free stuff and value. Oh my God, so many value for money right here, just with all these questions. Simplicity, yeah, exactly. So what happens when you take all of these things and combine them together? What happens when you take value for money and attention and simplicity and free stuff and combine them together? You get happiness, but you get the definition of consumer. And what consumers really want to do is consume. That's all they want to do. That's why we're called consumers. And when we consume, we want to do it in the way that we want to do it. We don't want to be told how to consume. And we have the means to do that now. We have the internet. We can change our services and our providers at the click of a button. All we want to do is we want to consume without being interrupted by anybody else. And we want to do it in the way that we want to do it. And we are empowered to do that now. But what is it that businesses want? Yeah, we want money. We want to sell our shit. That's what we want to do. And we're going to do that in the best way possible. So most of the time, that means we're going to interrupt our consumers. We're going to steal their data. And we're going to do everything that we can to get in front of people, right? That's what businesses do. That's certainly what consumers think businesses do. And do they have it wrong? If you look at some of the biggest businesses in the world, they don't have it wrong at all. So what's happening is we're fueling something that's called the divide. And it's the divide between what consumers want and what businesses need to do to get by. And as we sit here and go, how are we going to get more likes on Facebook? How are we going to get our ads in front of the right people? How are we going to do this? How are we going to track people's behavior? People like me, people who do that for a living, are fueling the divide between consumers, and we're making everybody really, really unhappy in the process. So we've got to fix some of that. So does this ultimately mean that it's all doom and gloom? Well, actually, it's not a very good picture. I'm not going to sugar it for you guys, but we're basically fucked, right? Okay, that's where we're standing at. Because for the first time ever, in 2019, we saw a global decline in page views. And that means that people stopped looking at websites as much as they were previously. Now, that doesn't mean that people stopped consuming. Actually, people consumed a lot more, We're just really impatient with how we consume. So we spend less time on websites and we look at less website pages. You might think that's not really a bad thing, but it is a really bad thing. It does come with a really nice thing, though, because it was actually an increase in conversion rates, because we're happier to do stuff online. We trust people. We will spend our money online because we can get it back if something goes really wrong. We're quite happy to buy things on Amazon. We're happy to give away our email address. Even though we feel funny about our data, we're quite happy to sign up for lead magnets and all sorts of stuff. So we're getting really comfortable interacting with businesses online. But there's a really big but in this, because in order to get a conversion, you have to get someone to spend 16% longer on a website. So while we're happy to do stuff online, and we have to stick around for longer to get that conversion, we aren't doing that. So we aren't spending as much time before. So we don't have as much attention as we used to. So we've got to do really good things with that attention, or maybe instead of trying to put some tactics and some strategies in place, maybe we just need to understand what people want to pay attention to. And if we understand that, we can provide the things that consumers actually want. And to get started, you have to know how attention works. And so to do that, we can start bridging that divide. So we're going to need to go into the why behind things. And that's what I want to do. So in the beginning, there was attention, because without attention, there's nothing else. Don't trust what the Bible says to you about in the beginning there being light. It's attention, right? Okay, so when you start off with attention, and you start looking at the theories behind attention, we come to the lovely Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. Any psychology nerds in the room? Thinking Fast and Slow? Yeah, one. Wow, I'm disappointed in you guys. Come on, you should have been reading up before you came in here. So these guys were super inventive, and they said, we have two different systems for paying attention. Run away very quickly. He did it as well. It was great. I have the power. Yeah. So he said we have two different systems for paying attention, these guys. And because they were super inventive, they called them System 1 and 2. And they basically said, the difference between these systems is that the one system is really, really fast. And because it's really fast, it's basically automatic. The other system is really, really slow. And because it's slow, it's really manual. And so they said, well, this is the automatic system. This is the manual system. It's really, really inventive, isn't it? These guys were on it. And they like to refer to System 1 as being autopilot and System 2 as being the pilot. Now, I make fun of their inventiveness, but actually this is our best theory of attention. It's been supported by lots of data over the last 30 years since they came up with this. And they basically said, this explains a lot of the weird stuff that we do. Because brains do really weird shit all day long. So does everybody know how to drive? Yeah, majority of the room, or at least learning how to drive for the younger ones. I'm not sure how young we are in this room. So when I learned how to drive, it was an entirely terrifying experience, and I hated it. It was awful. I remember getting in the car, and I learned how to drive in a Land Rover Defender, and it's the best car in the world. No one can argue with that. And I was just puttering along a track on the side of a mountain, terrified of falling off the edge. My grandfather was like, no, this is great. It's going to teach you lane guidance. And I'm like, oh, my God, I can drive off the edge of the mountain. And it was just really confusing, the whole thing, because you've got to do things with your feet. And I'm really badly coordinated the best of times. You've got to coordinate your feet, you've got to coordinate your hands, and you've got to do all the gear stuff, and that's really complicated. And then he went, okay, we've got to the end, we haven't died, you're ready to go out on the road with cars. And I was like, no, I'm not. And then when we went out on the road with cars, I realized something else. I've got to look up. I have to look at the cars. I have to figure out what's going on here. I can't look at my hands. I can't look at my feet. And I got so frustrated. And I got back in the car with my grandmother the next day, who is a terrible driver and swears a lot and gets really angry at people. And I looked at her and I'm like, how is she doing it? How is she doing this so easily? And I'm struggling to learn how to do it. Fast forward, a couple of years, I get in the car now, and sometimes I end up at the shops and I have no idea how I got there. And I'm like, I've been driving a 2-ton death machine and I don't remember driving here at all. That's terrifying. But it will often happen, and for some of us, we'll drive to the wrong location automatically. And basically, this is the two different systems. When you are learning how to drive, you are using System 2. And eventually, when you learn how to drive, you've put habits in place. When you put those habits in place, you're using System 1. And the real difference between the two systems is that System 1 can take in 11 million bits of information information per second. That's a lot of data, okay? A lot of data very, very quickly. Where system 2 can only take in 40 bits of information per second. So when you're learning how to drive, you're using that system and your brain is struggling. And your brain hates using that system. Because when your brain uses that system, it uses calories. And when you're using calories, that means you don't have enough to get away from the lions that are prowling around everywhere. So every time you use system 2, your brain tries to make you use system 1. And it's this constant go back between the two. And when you learn a habit, you put something called a rule or a mental shortcut in place. So your brain doesn't have to use lots of calories. And it's all great and it's lovely. But when you're using system 2, it's intensive and effortful and you're really, really tired afterwards. So I hope everyone's going to be really tired after this talk because you're going to be paying lots of attention. But it gets really boring talking about system 1 and system 2. So I thought we'd break it down, make it a bit more exciting. So system 1 is basically the minions, right? And system 2 is GRU. Has everyone seen the minions or a version thereof? Right? No. What are you even doing here? That's your homework. Go home and watch that. There you go. That's it. You're going to go back and you'll be like, I learned great things tonight. So the main premise of this movie is that Gru's like this amazing criminal overlord, and he's doing a great job, and he has all these dastardly plans, and he can't do everything by himself. And because he can't do everything by himself, he either employs or enslaves this little race of yellow people. I'm not entirely sure what kind of message we're trying to send to kids, but basically he has this group of people that do all of this stuff for him. And it's all great, except for the fact that the minions can only do one thing. They're not very bright, so one minion can do one job. And the whole premise of the movie is them just fucking shit up the whole time. Like them just like coming across something and not being able to handle it and just exploding stuff. And it kind of works out okay for Gru though, because he has thousands of minions. He doesn't just have 5 all doing one job. He has thousands of them all doing lots of different jobs and totally destroying stuff all the time. But the great thing is this is precisely how our brain works, pretty much. So we have this one dude who can only do so much. He can only take in so much information. And then we have all these minions running about the place, taking in the rest of the information. And this works fine, except for the fact that when we create our marketing materials and when we try and talk to our consumers, we think that our consumers are in Gru mode, these super cognitive beings. We love to think of the fact that we are these very clever, very sort of present, almost omnipresent beings in our brains. We like to think that. But in reality, you only spend 15% of your day in Gru mode or in system 2. The other 85% of your day you're spending in minion mode. All right, so when you're creating materials for your consumers, you have to get past the gatekeeper, and the gatekeeper is the minions. If you don't get past those guys, you're not going to get to Gru, because the brain does not want to use Gru because it uses precious calories. Now, I wish my brain used a bit more calories. I wouldn't mind, and I'm sure most people wouldn't mind if that was the case, but unfortunately, we've got the minions to thank for making our lives a little bit easier. So we know what to pay attention to, and our brain decides that well before we actually think we're paying attention to something. So I did a little experiment on myself. I didn't do it on my husband this time. It's great living with a psychologist because we're always doing experiments. And I searched for the best zombie movies. I used some eye tracking software to figure out what I was actually looking at. So I was trying to replicate another experiment without kind of like ruining their data. So I did my own. So I searched for best zombie movies, and I wanted to see what am I actively paying attention to in the search result. And just to zoom in a little bit, there's a couple of things that Google has tried to do to make my life really easy. So it's put all of the titles up at the top of some of the best movies, but I don't know what ranking system they've used for this. And what was really interesting is that my eyes didn't look at that at all. I skimmed straight past it. So the first thing that my eye settled on was this link, the 45 best zombie movies from IMDb. That was the first thing I had to look at, but I didn't click on it. The second thing I had to look at was the 10 best zombie movies of all time by Screen Rant. Now, if you're into any kind of alternative movies or slightly different stuff off the beaten track, then Screen Rant is generally the place that you go to for information, except for the fact that Screen Rant have become bastards, and they've put stuff on individual pages, so you have to click through, like really clickbaity, and I hate that. It's a waste of my precious 50 seconds. So I don't go to Screen Rant. I ended up clicking on the IMDb link instead. And what that was really interesting was, why did I do that? Why did I ignore all of these other guys? That sounds great. That's Time Out, Paste Magazine, don't know who that is. There's even a YouTube video on that. I just ignored all of it. I literally only looked at those 2 pieces of information on the page. And that's because I trust, and I've made a rule set for IMDb. Because it is crowdsourced and everybody else is putting their reviews on there, I trust that my peers are giving me the right information. So the minions go, we know IMDb, we trust this source, and I ignored everything else, I filtered it all out. What was particularly interesting is that I also knew what not to pay attention to, or at least my minions did anyway, because I found something on this page. And it's definitely the source that most people would go to get the best information on all things alternative. And I ended up going, and I just wanted to see, what did I ignore? And I ignored this one, which is such a shame, because I definitely would have got the information from there. It's the 13 best zombie movies from none other than the Cosmopolitan magazine. That resource for good movie information. And the other thing I ignored was the second page of Google, because I found what I wanted on the first page. I didn't even go there. So your consumers are in minion mode all of the time. And if they're in minion mode, that just means that most of the time they're ignoring what you're doing. If you're trying to talk to Guru, you need to talk to the minions instead. And you need to find little hacks and little systems that you can put in place in order to get people to pay attention to you instead. So let's take a look at some real life brain stuff. So the first thing that you can do as businesses is you can really, really nail framing. So framing is really important to us. And are we ready for a little bit more audience participation? Yeah. So all you have to do is scream left or right. That's it. I'm going to show you a picture. I want to know which little square in the middle is darker, which is the darker gray. Okay? And you're just going to scream left or right. Don't think about it too much. Which one is it? No. The square in the middle, guys. Yeah, right. Correct. No one listens to instructions. You're not paying attention. The whole talk is about attention. Right, so basically it's this square here. The square in the middle is darker. Now, when we put people in various different things to have a look at how we perceive color, most people perceive color in different wavelengths. So you can see in the brain with different wavelengths what the color is that they're perceiving. And we can see that people perceive this square on the inside as darker. But using my amazing copy and paste skills, they are exactly the same color. No difference between the two whatsoever. Oh, I'm going the wrong way. Giving it all away. So our brain is literally using the frame that is around the squares to dictate what's inside the square. And in reality, it's exactly the same color. So we can utilize this to our advantage because there is a frame put around absolutely everything that we do, and we can control that frame. So you either control the frame or you let external resources control the frame for you. There is no other option. So The Economist is actually a really good example of this in real life in a more sort of tactical way. So The Economist has a great pricing structure, and they had theeconomist.com as a subscription for $59, the print subscription for $125, and the print and web subscription for $125. Now, I'm not a maths genius, but I'm pretty sure that 125 plus 59 is not 125. So immediately we know that that's a really good deal. So what was really interesting is when you looked at the conversion rates on the pages for this. So the economist.com subscription converted at around 16%. Just the print subscription by itself, full 0%. No one is buying that. And the rest of the people, 84% of the people are buying the print and web subscription, even though it's the more expensive option. Why are we doing that? Well, because our brain said that it's a great deal, even though maybe it isn't. And so the user experience designers in all their great knowledge said, we're going to get rid of this one. That's 0%. No one's doing anything with that. It's a useless non-converter. Eliminate it. So this is what we end up with, right? And fascinating what happened. Profits plummeted. 68% of people now went to the $59 option and 32% to the $125 option. Okay, so there is an effect called coherent arbitrariness. This is a bias that we have. And just using that coherent arbitrariness gave The Economist a 43% boost in their profits as a result. And so what coherent arbitrariness is it's a framing bias. We take an arbitrary thing and we create a baseline baseline, which we assume is true, and we coherently do it all the time. So you can either put no baseline in place, or you can put a baseline in place and see what happens. So there's little things that we can be doing to help people make decisions, but we need to use our superpowers for good. So one of the ways that we can do this as well is by looking at the signals that we are giving people. Because every time we give someone a piece of information, we're giving them certain types of signals. You either give people implicit signals or you give people explicit signals. So implicit signals is everything that you imply. It's the way you look. It's, like rockers like to wear certain pieces of clothing. Heavy metalers like to wear certain pieces of clothing. Very professional people like to wear sparkly shoes, right? We all have our signals that we're giving out. These are implied signals that we're telling people. I don't have the word sparkly shoed idiot tattooed on my forehead, but people can see that straight away. So the explicit signals are the things that are very clearly labeled as such. So implicit signals are understood by the minions. That's what they live on. If you tell somebody, think of something round, think of something that's round and green, and think of something that's round and green and has a stalk, most people start thinking along the lines of apples or some kind of fruit that is round and green and has a stalk. The more you do that, the more tests you go into, you realize that you don't have to give people very much information at all before they draw their own conclusions. The explicit signals are controlled by group. And the explicit signals might be something like the word apple or a sentence that is describing an apple. But the implicit signals are the first thing that we understand. And if you can get the implicit signals right, you get past the gatekeepers who will then allow you to pay attention and use that calorie-consuming part of your brain. So I want to show you an example of somebody doing this really well. It's my favorite example of people being really silly. So Adidas, and we're going to get really sexist now, okay? So if you're going to get offended, I'm just giving you a pre-trigger warning, but we're all going to get super sexist. And I'm qualified. It's fine. I'm allowed to be sexist. It's okay. So Adidas came up with a new shower gel called Dynamic Pulse shower gel. Great name for shower gel, right? And they had to get into the marketplace, and their target audience was the manly man. One of the hardest target audiences to convert to everything. Here we go, manly man. You might not want to be part of this example. Okay? I'm just going to warn you, you might not. I'm going to get really insulting right now. So let's not be part of it. So the whole deal with the manly man is that he is extremely loyal. So the manly man decides on something and he will buy that thing for the rest of his life and he ain't going to change it. And when Adidas went to market with Dynamic Pulse shower gel, it was Imperial leather that was the top shower gel out there, because basically you can use it, you don't have to put your perfumey stuff on, your manly perfumey stuff don't have to go on because you smell nice, right? So the manly man doesn't go into the supermarket, look at all the different bottles of shampoo and shower gel, sniff them and read the back. He's not doing that. He stomps into the supermarket, throws it in his trolley and stomps back out again to go play with something else, right? The manly man isn't faffing around watching loads of adverts and paying attention to stuff on TV. So how do you change what the manly man showers with? Well, you get really clever. You find out what the manly man holds really dear. And when you find out what he holds really dear, you make your product look like that thing. And so they figured that the thing that the manly man really, really holds dear was castor motor oil. Yeah? And it worked. It actually worked. They managed to knock Imperial leather off. Now, what they did to actually make it really be like the motor oil, so they chose the color. No one else was using different colored bottles at that point. They put this grip on the side. It has this super grip, which is the same as the grip that's on the side here. So when you hold it, it feels the same. And probably the best bit was the feedback that they had when you opened the cap. When you open the cap, it makes the same click as an oil bottle makes when you open the cap of it. So clever. And it worked. It actually worked as well. You look at this stuff and you think, you psychologists are a bunch of wankers. And it's true. It's true. We are. But then something really bad happened because Castrol changed its branding. It's all right, we changed ours too. It's totally fine. It's totally fine. So what they did really cleverly was they controlled all the implicit signals. And by doing that, the minions were super happy, right? Because you've controlled all the variables, everything matches, it's something we love, and we've just decided, yes, we're quite happy with that, and that's going to be our purchase. And what was the explicit signal here? It was the name Dynamic Pulse, which means fuck all, right? What does Dynamic Pulse even mean? It might mean something to do with cars. I don't know, I'm not a manly man. But all the implicit signals were in the right place, and it worked really, really well. And the other thing that we can do is we can control for cognitive effort, because once you've got attention, you want to keep the attention. So if you're using your implicit signals and you're framing really well and you've got that attention, don't waste it by making people's lives really hard. The brain doesn't want to use calories, don't make it use calories. So here's a little thing that we're going to play, right? Now, I'm not decided, I think I'm going to ban Jeremy from this. I'm going to ban anyone who is colorblind. I'm really sorry, you can't play. And anyone who is dyslexic, I'm also sorry, you can't play because you have an unfair advantage. So you guys aren't allowed to play the game, but everyone else can play. I'm totally a dictator. So the idea is, with the S2EP test, is it causes the two parts of your brain to fight, like a really hardcore fight. And it's an evil bastard of a test, because generally when you do a test, it gets easier as you go along. This test gets harder the more you do it. And it's because it makes the two systems fight. So the idea behind the test is that you say the color, don't read the word. Okay, so you've got to say the color out loud, and we're going to do the first line together. Okay, everyone's practicing already. That's not allowed. That's not allowed. Okay, so the first one is green, then purple or pink. That's fine. Then yellow. That one's evil, and then red. Right? And then the further on you go, the more likely you are to screw up. And the reason this happens is because when you start out in system 2, you start out as Gru, and everything's great because you're paying very close attention. The further on you go, the minions go, hey, you're using calories. We don't like that. We don't want that. We've got to save them for the lions. We've got to run away from shit. So they go, it's okay, we can help. We can help. And so the minions take over. But when the minions take over, they read the word, because that's the rule set we've got in place. And when they read the word, you trip up and you've lost. So then system 2 takes over, and Gru goes, no, stop it. You're messing everything up. And it takes over again. And then you start using more calories, and the brain goes, no, we can do this, we can read. And it starts the process all over again. And so you constantly trip up, and the more you do it, the harder the entire test gets, and the more mistakes you make because your brain is getting fatigued. Now, when you are putting really difficult to consume things on your website and your marketing materials, that's what you're doing to your consumers. It makes it really hard for them to pay attention. And when the minions are confused or your brain is fatigued, only one of two things is going to happen. The information is going to get ignored and deleted because it's taking up cognitive space. We don't want to make things really, really hard. And if you really want to mess with your friends and you really like swearing, not sponsored by the way, there's this game that I got bought, that was bought for me for Christmas. It is a great game, has lots of really bad swear words in it, so you have to like swearing. And it's a drinking game, and every time you make a mistake, you have to take a drink, and it's hilarious. And it just gets worse the further along you go. So what's the answer to life, the universe, and everything? And as some of you, no, it's not. Lies. It says in brackets, it's not. It's flowcharts. Yeah? Yeah. Aren't flowcharts lovely? All joking aside, though, it is flowcharts, but more it is a behavioral structure for designing experiences. Because when you sit down and you give yourself space to properly design an experience, you start to think about these things. You start to think about, okay, all right, we've got to pay attention to this. How do we help people understand this? Is this a little bit too hard? Give yourself the time and the space to sit down and design your experience, and you start to give yourself the opportunity to be behavioral and to help people pay attention. So if you want to hack brains, it's really simple. Ease cognitive demand. Make it easy for people to understand stuff. Frame really well and build your consumers a journey to go on. Give them the next step all the time. People like to know where they're going. So what you're going to go off and do is your homework. We like giving people homework. First thing is I want you to go have a look at your materials. Go have a look at the stuff that you're doing. Are you controlling the frame? Because if you're not controlling it, someone else is, and it's more than likely the minions, and that's a bad time. So control the frame really, really well. Is it cognitively demanding? This is probably the worst thing I see people do. Is it difficult to consume your materials? Can the minions understand it? What's implicit in your materials? Like, who are you trying to look like? How are you trying to corral all of that stuff together? And what's explicit? So what's really obvious for people? And is it the right message that you're wanting to get across to group because you have a very short space of time to use that attention? And most of all, is it minion friendly? If I can give you one piece of advice, it's just to think of your consumers as minions. Don't call them that to their face. But, just kind of make sure that everything's easy, simple, and you'll have an efficient and effective marketing process. Now, if you want a little bit more on this, I strongly suggest that you be like Ross and go get yourself a copy of the book. You can get it at that link, but it goes into a little bit more of the tactical stuff as to how you can all use all of the stuff, and a little bit more into the neuroscience behind it, because we all love a bit of neuroscience, right? So that's me, guys. Thank you very much.
So good. Any questions at all for Kenda?
No.
When are the questions for the book?
Now, do it now. I'm a little bit ahead of time. We're good.
You're good for time.
Go on.
On the Stroop test,
Yes.
bottom row,
Yes.
furthest left, what colour was the word purple? Single purple. No, that's cheating.
I don't know. I wasn't paying attention. It's your job. It's your job to pay attention, not mine. What was it, though?
Yellow.
Oh. Oh, no. Oh, no. Oh, I can't answer that question.
Next question.
Oh, go on, yeah. Oh, no, he's handing microphones out.
This one here.
I don't get to choose.
We need the microphone for the live stream.
I think I've employed your two tests to image-based content. So almost having the minions opening a video and that fight between Gru and the minions to deliver a good product video or an image.
So do you mean, have I actually tested this? Or have I thought about using the minions? Because I will get into a lot of trouble.
Does it work?
If I use the minions. Yes, it does work.
As an image-based form of video?
Yes, it works. You know, on YouTube ads, when they have the pre-scroll, it works really well in that. If you can get attention within a certain amount of time. So you basically have two ways that you can go about getting attention. You either have to be so exciting, so different, that the minions freak out and don't know what to do about it, but then you also have to be important, so they pass it up to Gru. So you either have to do that, which is really difficult to do, and you have to be the first person to do that, because the second they learn that you're just trying to grab their attention, that's it, it's game over. Or you have to be really, really good and be something that they're actually interested in. So you're much better off trying to find the right consumer and give them the right information, and then you can. But they've tested that on pre-scroll ads. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Pleasure.
Go on, next one. Go on.
Oh goodness.
I'm actually trying to read Thinking Fast and Slow at the moment.
It's difficult.
How do I get my brain to concentrate on?
Yeah, just think of it as minions. I don't know. It's really. I've read that book several times because there was a lot of the base research for that. I also went and I read their individual studies, which are even harder to read. It's my big problem with the psychology industry. It's full of psychobabble. And it's one of the things I tried to really step away of, just be nice and normal, like a normal person. It is really difficult, but what I would suggest is there are a lot of people like me when I was studying who created summaries of the book to help them studying, and that might be a better way to consume the information because they haven't written it in an accessible way. And they've mixed loads of stats in with it. So if you don't like stats, you know, you're definitely going to switch off. But yeah, try and find a summary that's a little bit more human.
Durgan.
Kenda, with the Economist example, which is brilliant, is there any evidence to suggest that the price of the second two, i.e. print and web, why were they the same price rather than logic suggests that perhaps the web and print, if it were 5% more, would the percentages be greater?
If you have a look at The Economist, the UK version, it isn't the same price for the two of them. And it still works just as well. But I don't think that there was any logic behind it, because otherwise they wouldn't have taken the non-converter out and lost all that money for about 6 months as for what they tested it for. So it was a lot of money that they lost. So I don't think they would have done it. It's just one of the most famous examples. But it's immediately obvious with that it's a good deal. Because your brain goes, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. I got tweeted something recently with someone. If you want to tweet me like weird stuff that marketers do, please by all means do. I love that shit. I saw something really cool that Amazon did. So Amazon had a deal price and then you could select an option for the normal price. Like, why would you select the option for the normal price? And somebody just tweeted out about it, being like, this doesn't make any sense, Amazon. Why would you do that? Actually, it makes perfect sense, because what Amazon is reminding you is that that's what the normal price is, and you're getting the deal price. No one's going to select it, but Amazon is just reminding you that you're getting a good deal. So I get really annoyed when I see people offer a discount price and they don't have the crossed out amount next to it. We need to know what the baseline is, and you need to control that frame. So if you're giving someone a deal, show them how much of a deal you're giving them. It makes it much easier for us to understand.
Right, I'm working around the room.
Yeah.
Patrick.
You get the microphone now. I'm glad you're not a manly man, because, you know, sorry to all the manly men, super sexist.
I am a manly man.
There you go.
All right.
I was gonna ask if it did smell of oil, but my question was actually exactly almost the same question. It was like when you showed the second one, you actually said there was a 43% drop when they took it out.
Yeah.
Sorry, increase actually.
No,
it said increase
I meant
on
that
there.
it was
Yeah.
inherent arbitrariness gave it a 43% boost. By having that useless non-converter, it was 43% more profitable.
That absolutely makes sense.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they call themselves the Economist either, because they should have known.
I don't think the UX designers were economists. It's the most famous example of a very costly mistake.
Okay. Well, since don't have my question anymore, my one question is, can you sing?
No.
Oh, because I want to say happy birthday to you.
To Shane.
Happy birthday to Shane. Happy birthday, dear Shane. Happy birthday to you.
I'm faster than everyone else. Yeah. That's going to be great for the live stream guys who can only hear me singing. It's going to be really nice for them. Yeah. Happy birthday. Good job. Good job.
Hi.
Hi.
I just want to know what the #1 zombie film was.
Oh.
And if you get it wrong, I'll tell you what it is.
28 Weeks Later is not a zombie film. That's virus. That was number 3. Sorry.
My #1 is actually, disappointingly, Shaun of the Dead.
Yes.
You see, I love it because it was funny, and my little brother can watch it with me. He's only 6, so that's currently my favourite. But even though it is a virus and very disputed, 28 Days Later is my second favourite.
Have you seen Train to Busan?
No, what is this?
It's a Korean one. It's really good.
Oh, the train. Yes, I have seen that. That was really cool. Yeah, but I didn't. They could do less CGI.
Were you not in a zombie film, though?
No, I'm too short for that one.
Oh, so you're not manly man enough. You should have used some Adidas Dynamic Pulse. You'll be fine. Oh, there we go. Oh, there's a reaching for the microphone behind you.
Hi, sorry, nothing about zombie films.
Oh.
There used to be a statistic about attention and about the amount of time it was and how it's shortened now, and because our brains are changing so that we're just not taking attention anymore. What is the time now that you can hold someone's attention for? The statistic.
The statistic is basically bullshit. Sorry. They cannot.
They are.
It's as most of them are. The things that you've got to look for with statistics is whether it's actually relevant, so whether it's more than chance. And most of these, because they're just surveys and stuff, aren't any more than chance, so that there isn't any statistical validation behind any of them. However, we do know how long. It's in the book. There's actually some stuff in the book. We do know how long it takes for System 1 to pay attention, so for the minions to pay attention and decide whether or not they like certain materials. And it's less than a second for most of them. So it's not enough information. The thing we can take away from those studies is the fact that we don't actually look at something for enough time to take any of the information away before we decide whether or not we're going to trust it. So those implicit signals are so powerful that we make the decision well before we've consumed the content. So if you're not aligning the two things up, you're really shooting yourself in the foot. Dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
Excellent. Oh, someone in the middle. Could we pass the mic down? Thanks.
Does it matter for your attention on what medium you consume? So whether you're looking at a small phone screen?
Definitely. So one of the worst things that we can do is advertise badly because we waste a lot of our money. So sometimes you'll see people advertising like maybe B2B services, like a piece of tech or a piece of software on Facebook in the evening. So you've got to think about what the mode the person is in, and that really, you know, when we're looking for something really actively, we'll pay attention to things. Otherwise, the minions are going not relevant, not relevant, not relevant. And if we're scrolling along on social media and we're trying to wind down, we're not going to go look at some tech tool that's going to show you how to do something. But when we're maybe on LinkedIn during the day and we're very actively thinking about work, that might trigger up the attention. So you do really need to think about what medium is somebody on and why are they on that medium as to whether or not they're going to pay attention. But there's definitely a difference between video content and like blog textual content, which is why I prefer blog textual content over video. So it does affect the way that you pay attention to stuff. You tend to take in more when you read stuff because you're using more parts of your brain to understand reading. Yeah.
Are the System 1 minions sort of a generic... what's the way I'm trying to say this? Are they the same demographic? Do they all behave the same way? Or are there different groups of minion?
Yes, it's massively cultural.
Okay.
So you have massive cultural differentiations. There's a really great book. I'll send you the link to it. It's got one part in it, the rest of it's rubbish, but I'm the kind of person who will buy something for one page in a book if it's going to help me get somewhere. And it's got a really great section which basically goes through what different cultures hold in high regard. And that means that their minions are going to interact differently. Demographically speaking, because different things are important to different demographics, it means we're going to pay attention to things differently. So, for instance, younger generations are much more, in the teenage years, are much more obsessed about how something looks, whereas older generations don't really care about it. So you really do have a play with demographics and psychographics.
So you've got to think like the right type of minion. Right.
Yeah, which is why just target your audience really, really clearly. And if you can be super targeted on your audience, you'll be able to provide the stuff that they're interested in and forget the rest. Yeah.
Where'd you get your shoes?
Oh. This is actually going to excite FitFlop very much, but FitFlop sponsored FitFlops, and they sponsored all of the Brighton SEO speakers, so I got them for free.
I just love well, they're happening.
Aren't they great? I don't think I'm ever going to buy any other shoes as well because they're super comfy. They're great.
Is that all good? Oh, one more?
Two more?
Oh, two more?
Three more. Well, you just cut me off whenever you like.
So I tend to just skip past the sponsored links when I'm doing any Google searches, just an inherent behaviour. Do we find that as the sort of the dark arts of the web are greater understood that more people are skipping past those links, or are they still quite an effective method of advertising?
Well, I have a very strongly held opinion on sponsored links not being very good. So please don't kill me if you're in advertising. No. You've got to think about what the intent is behind what someone is trying to do. And very often you'll find if it is really exciting, people will click on it. But you've got to think about how they're going to go into that page when they're doing it. So they go with their guard up. So you've got a lot more work to do when you're bringing someone through from an ad to bring that guard back down again and get them trusting you. You have, so we've done many studies with loads of our clients. We've just completed an 18-month study on customer lifetime value and the different types of traffic that contribute to that. And organic traffic by far wins everything else. So organic traffic brings in consistent customer lifetime value over social media spend and Google click traffic. That's not to say that those things don't have their place. It's just that if you're looking at pure data, that's the one that's winning. Yeah.
Great, thanks, Kenda.
While we're walking
Ready for a
over,
cup of
I've just
tea
got
now?
a couple of questions on the live stream.
Oh, yes.
So we've got someone asking, thinking about written content, would it be good to start with minion content to attract attention before moving on to being more sophisticated, where GRU gets involved?
Yes. So you definitely want to have the stuff that captures the attention of people, and then you want to take them a little bit deeper. So we call this daisy chaining content. So you bring someone in for a certain piece of content, and then you transition them onto something else. So this is particularly prevalent in industries where someone thinks that they want something, but actually they need something entirely different. So you might need to kind of teach people a little bit about something with some basic content that is, created for succulence and excitement, and then transition them onto some more advanced content when they realize that you actually know what you're talking about. Trying to go straight for the advanced content is only going to capture a really small pool of people, so you're definitely better off going with some basic, exciting, succulent stuff and then hitting them with the hard truths afterwards.
Awesome. And then one more. Paul on the live stream says, how important are visuals in swaying decision compared to text alone?
Very important. However, and throw a caveat in there, I would say that the vast majority of the time, yes, very important. We are starting to pay attention to meme type information like we pay attention to videos. Like we pay attention to visuals. So when we see little bits of text as a meme, we have a different reaction to something that is like that, something that lots of people are sharing on social media. So, when you see like someone's like screenshotted a tweet or something, and it's really funny and people are sharing that, we are now interacting with that text-based visual in the same way that we're interacting with visuals. So the way that we're interacting with stuff is changing as well. So it's just a real clusterfuck working in psychology, because, the brains just don't stop. They just do stuff all the time, and they change everything that they're doing. But yeah, we are adapting the way that we interact with things, but definitely visuals are really important. And it's especially important to stay ahead of the trends with visuals, because the second it starts looking like everything else, you need to change it up again.
Brilliant. And I think we need to wrap it there, I'm afraid. Oh, just last one. Last one.
It's all right, thanks.
Do it.
Holding it politely.
Yeah, no worries. I feel like my thunder may have been stolen by one of the previous questions, but it was really a case of I wanted to gauge your opinion on whether impact, like big image or big video, impact marketing was better, or whether it was a consistent marketing campaign that would work better in the long run.
Consistency always wins with the minions, because you're creating a positive rule set. So you might need to start with impact and then move on to something that's a bit more consistent.
A trickle effect.
The reason I went for IMDb is because I trust it long term, and pretty much nothing else. So if you can have a trickle effect and you can put that rule set in place, then you're winning. It's all about the rules. Yeah.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Excellent.
Oh, I got to choose.
Question.
I have to choose a question.
I can't remember any of them.